And you're on.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Haven't seen you for a while, but it's good to be here with you. I hope today is informative, and feel free to ask me anything. You won't make me angry if you are upset with someone who did an appraisal and it didn't come out right. It happens. There's all levels of expertise in all levels of employment, and appraisers are no different. So I gave you a sample of the 2 sheets of the main thing in the appraisal. The first sheet, I wanted to just go over it. Some of you may not be familiar with the way an appraisal looks or the contents it has, and some of you are very familiar and will be bored, so I apologize for that. But the first sheet is very explanatory. You're just giving the property information, the borrower, and the owner of record. The owner of record is the seller. Sometimes it's both. You know, sometimes you're if I'm doing a refinance, then that would be both. I have had a couple of incidents when the owner of record was not the same as the borrower, and nobody knew it. Maybe it was their mothers or something. But anyway, you get all of the information about it from the assessor, and then the client, of course, is the banker, or sometimes if you're doing it for a trust company or an individual, and then the type of assignment. It's either a purchase, refinance, or other. It could just be someone wanting to know the value of their property. Then it asks, you have to state whether you analyze the property or not. And then you have to put down the contract price, the date, and any kind of concessions. Then you go down to the neighborhood characteristics section, and you have to check, you know, whether it's urban, suburban, the buildup, the growth. It could be if it's a new subdivision. Right now, everything's, but if it's not talking about the growth of the values there, it's just talking about the neighborhood. And if it was a full neighborhood, an old neighborhood, you'd just say the staple. And then on the 1-unit housing, you're talking about property values, demand and supply, marketing time. And, you know, you need to know that. Over in the 1 housing to the right of that, that's just talking about your subject and their neighborhood. What's the price range there? And what's the age of that neighborhood? What's the spread, or 10 to 30, whatever. And then in the present land use, you know, we do have mixed neighborhoods. The first thing I think of is Chesterfield Village. You know, and you've got to know what the percent of 1 units, 2 units, multi, commercial, and then other. Other primarily or typically would just refer to what's vacant and why it's vacant. And if you say other, then you have to explain the present land use. The other in present land use is vacant lots, vacant land. If you're in a rural or suburban, it's farmland, rural, whatever, but you explain that. Then the boundaries. What about neighborhood boundaries? Well, you have to know if it's University Heights, then you know from National over what that is, and that's what you're saying, north, south, east, west. What are you considering that property's boundaries?
Joyce, can I ask you this? Just
yes.
on that, many years ago when we had when we had Rapatoni, we had maps that were drawn out that had Southeast 1, Southeast 2, South. Were those boundaries, created by the appraisers at that time and turned into?
No, actually, those were created by the realtors.
Okay.
The real estate, yes, that was.
So where you think it's a neighborhood just because it's one subdivision, the neighborhood can be multiple subdivisions. It can be a bigger area.
If they are close knit together.
Yeah, right.
Yes, they can be more than your subdivision, but they have to be compatible and in the price range. if you go outside your, whatever you're using, University Heights, if you go outside of that, they must be competing competing homes. And you can't expand if, as you know, sometimes there isn't enough sales in your neighborhood, and you just have to explain. But that doesn't mean you don't exactly describe what you consider. You as the appraiser consider the neighborhood. And then market conditions, you have to state what kind of financing is available. And is it readily available? So, and then the dimensions, that's your site. And you can go on to, I would suggest that if you were an appraiser, we belong to the assessor website, and it's a fee, but a lot of times in the realtor site, when it will average them. But if you, right there, you really need to know the exact, what's the front, what's each side. And sometimes they're extremely irregular, like in a cul-de-sac. But you need those dimensions, and then the area. That's also, if it is tremendously irregular, on the assessor side, they do have a section, and they'll show you that site, but then they will show you what they think is 1,250 square feet or 400 or 4,800, whatever it is. And that's what I use, because that's what anybody reviewing this can pull up and see. And you have to say what shape it is and what they're viewing. Are they viewing other houses? And the reason I think that they ask for view is because, are you looking at a dump? Are you looking at a car lot? Are you, some of those things, they want to know what that house views, because it would affect the value. And then zoning, that's pretty much, you can get that from the assessor records. And is it legal? Non-conforming, grandfathered? And you will find that in a lot of older neighborhoods that they were once a neighborhood, and now they're going business. Sites are being sold out, and somebody's putting in an office or something like that. So you would explain that it's legal, or the legal non-conforming is if it was grandfathered in, because as long as it was a house and you bought it as a house, it's going to remain a house until bought by someone else and changed. Now, the highest and best use of a property as improved. Again, thinking about that same scenario, what if it was a section where all the homes are being converted to businesses? And you would have to say that the highest and best use is no longer what it's being used for. Whatever it's used at the time, you would appraise it at that, but it's no longer conforming to the neighborhood. So you have to explain that. And then the next is utilities and the alley. A lot of the older sections of Springfield and older homes, they do have an alley behind them. And so you have to, mark that. Then, of course, the flood map. The appraiser does not determine the flood zone. There is, in the program that you are using, they automatically insert that. And sometimes it differs. And if it does, maybe a lender will call and say, it's been marked as flood zone, and we're saying when we check it, it's coming up no. Well, the reason that happens is a lot of times they rezone the flood map. FEMA recertifies, because it may be high, it may have an area back behind it or something, but it's up high enough that it's not affected. But the program can't keep up. And then you're just talking about, the utilities, are they typical? And is there any kind of adverse conditions? And there can be, like we talked about, you could have something unsightly beside the house or in front of the house or behind it. And you
Can I
just
ask you a
have,
question about that,
Mhm.
the flood deal?
Mhm.
So if any part of the parcel of the property is in the flood zone, it's gonna mark it?
it is,
Has nothing to do with the location of the house?
no. And you can go on site to, in the Springfield, and this is what we do if it comes up. You can look, they have an area where it's marked, and sometimes it will be marked flood zone. And you'll see a circle, and they make it purple or pink or something. Well, if you're out there and you don't see anything, it could be a pond or just a low area. And so you have to be aware of that because you don't want anybody having to pay flood insurance. But yes, it can show up that way. Okay, if you go on down to general description, you're just talking about one is just that it's a single home. And then the number of stories, detached or attached if you were doing a patio home, existing, proposed, or under construction, because you can do them, you can be given house plans, and you do the appraisal based on the house plans and going out and looking at the site. Then design, year built, effective age. Effective age, it is the opinion of the appraisal when they enter. But as you know, right now with all the flipping, there is a lot of people buying properties in old neighborhoods, going in and totally gutting and remodeling. And if they don't gut, they, just bring it all up to date. Well, you walk in and it's like a new home. You cannot say it's new because the foundation and the outside and, everything, it's just the interior. But you can say the effective age, you would never say new for a house that's been standing and remodeled. You determine in your own mind what year you want the effective age you want to assign it. And then the attic, as we go down, it's pretty simple. You just say drop staircase or scuttle, when you have the little tiny opening. And is it heated? There is times that people will open up the attic and heat it, make a little bonus room or something, and that's all that's talking about. Foundation's pretty similar, pretty explanatory. The basement area and the basement finish. Not all the time is the basement the same as the upper, like split foyers and that sort of thing. And then you have to measure out the part in the basement that is finished. And you have to take out the storage in the mechanical area and all that, because they want to know what percentage. It's outside exit or sump pump. Does it have a sump pump? You have to look for infestation, dampness, settlement. I just did one yesterday, just a little crawl space house. But when I opened the crawl space door, there was about an inch of water all under. And we know in the Ozarks that can happen. He did have a sump pump, but it hadn't pumped the water out. So I just told the homeowner, did you know you have water in your, of course they were totally surprised. Who looks in their crawl space very often? And I just said, you may have to go have a plumber out to check the sump pump. And then it's my responsibility to report that. In this case, it was a for sale by owner, and I just called the owner and told him, and I said, I don't think he's aware, and now he is. You might ask him to get a plumber and maybe get this resolved before, closing. But if it were a conventional loan with a lender, I would just have to say there's 1 inch of standing water in the basement. And then that would be subject to them getting that particular situation cleared up, whatever it required. I mean, it's not my job to tell, I just could do report, but in that instance, I thought it was more than right to explain to both parties what needed to be done. And I told, I said, why don't you leave this door open and see how much, and then have a plumber check because, it's a really nice house, just an average house, but it's nice. That's probably just an easy fix. But, okay, then we go on to heating, what type of heating, what type of cooling. And then the foundation over on foundation, exterior walls, the roof surface, guttering, downspout. What type of windows? Are they casement? Are they double hung? Do they have storm sashes? Is it insulation? Is there screens? And in flooring, you just say what they are, what combination. Walls, they're either going to be drywall or plaster in our area, where the old homes are. Trim, they want to know if it's a wood and if it's painted or is it stained. I don't know why that's important, but it is. I want to know. Bath flooring, the wainscot, what do they have tile up, or is it just drywall, or that sort of thing. And then they want to know the car storage. And how many driveways, how many cars, what's the surface of the driveway? Is the garage attached or is it detached? And then that last word, appliances, you just check what kind of appliances they have. And then this gets someone finished area above grade contains. And if you put 5 rooms, how many bedrooms, how many baths? That's only on that main level if it's a basement home. And it would also include the upper if it's a story and a half or 2-story. You would count the rooms and put them there and put that square footage. You're not putting the basement square footage there. And a lot of people look at it and go, she doesn't know what she's talking about, Also, you do not count the laundry room and the bathroom. You put the bathrooms, but the laundry room, is not included in that. Or say a little big pantry. You're just putting the main living areas. The living, the bedrooms, office, and the baths. Then you have to describe the condition of the property. And anything you see that you think needs repair, but you wouldn't put, let me think. You're not there to make them repair things. If it was a glaring thing that would affect livability of the home, then you would state that. But you're not nitpicking the property and saying, hey, they need to replace this vinyl here. You don't do that. That you just say the condition. And as you know, the ratings, they start out C1 is condition, C2, C3, and you're just saying C1 is new, or just brand new, and then C2 is probably up to 5 years. Oh, I'm sorry. What is I'm sorry? I forgot to turn it off.
That's okay. You can do it if you need to, or you can just let it go.
We'll let it go.
Okay.
Yes. You're just remodeling. Here, I state any updates, like I'll say, kitchen has been updated, has new appliances, new countertops, bathrooms have been updated. You don't ever, as I said prior to, say, in your opinion, somebody should replace this. Someone else wouldn't say that. So I just put what has been done to the home, and it supports your effective age. If you have a house that's 20 years old and you got all new appliances, put in a new countertop, well, that brings the effective age probably, because as you know, primarily women decide the house if it's a couple, and she wants newer kitchen, she wants a nice bathroom, the closets, that kind of thing. But that's what you do to support what you do. And then any physical deficiencies, adverse conditions, soundness, structural integrity. If there was something that you thought that affected the livability of the home, you would state that. Otherwise, you would not. And the last one is, does the property conform to the neighborhood? Or is it an oddball? Is it the only house that's modern, extreme modern? But if there's a mix of styles, you say yes, it conforms well to the neighborhood.
Hey, Joyce, under heating, what is FWA?
I'm sorry.
Under heating, what is FWA?
Or they're just talking about what type of furnace.
Yeah, what is it, FWA?
FWA would be like conventional, like a regular furnace.
Like
Heat there, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And then the HBB is,
What one?
yes, the hot water and radiant.
I just wasn't sure if that was like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, then you get to the hard part. You've listed everything on you get over and you put the sale price if it's a sale. Then you list the concessions, whether it's conventional, FHA, and the concessions. And then when the date, the time on the subject isn't important at all, but you just put the day it's sold on the contract. And then whether it's fee simple, which almost totally it is, the size of the site, the view, the design, the quality of construction. That's going to be, we have one appraiser in Springfield who, it can be a nice home, like $400,000, and he'll, for some reason, he has a different opinion, and he also has a different opinion of condition. And he thinks if it's older than 10 years, then it can't possibly have a condition of C3. C3 is very good condition. C2 is almost new. C1 is new. And then C3, if it's been updated, even if it's been well maintained and it shows very minimum wear, then it should be, you should have it as a C3.
Hey, Joyce, I have a quick question on that point. Like when you say something like it is the appraiser's opinion of the condition of the property, right?
Yes.
So an agent's perspective might be that it's better than what the appraiser sees it as.
Yes.
But the appraiser doesn't just pull that out of the air, right? I mean,
No.
they have experience, or they have the Fannie Mae guidelines is like 150 pages or something that
Yes.
kind of tell you on all of these different parameters how the appraisers have to act to an extent, right? I mean,
Yes.
there is, so even though it might seem to us that the appraiser just does whatever, then they don't know what they're doing, they have.
Yes, each one of those, like the C1, it will explain to you what C1 represents, C2, and explain to you what that represents, C4. And so you have to look at that and say, okay, where does this property fall? But the one thing, if he had an opinion different from you, keep in mind, he's probably going to have the same opinion of the comparables. See, he will rate them the same in his mind. So it more than likely would not affect the value whatsoever. We just all see it differently. But, so I don't think it's a real problem, because he, like I said, he's just going to look at our sheet, going to look at each one the same way.
Yeah, I think a lot of times agents, even newer agents, sometimes don't understand the amount of apprenticeship that the appraisers have to do, and the oversight that they have on them, and the manuals and the training and everything else. And they're kind of restricted to what they have to do.
Turn that off. But
That's why they're-
so it's not a distraction.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
No. So I look at that when you have like a 15, you have the basic to do it is 1,000 hours worth of an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
To be a residential appraiser, it's 1,500 hours of being of an apprenticeship. And if you're a general appraiser, it's 3,000 hours. It's a lot of hours, and having someone else that's experienced overseeing you. They have to have at least 5 years worth of experience. So, and that's why I think a lot of appraisers, when you go back and say, hey, I don't think this value you gave it is correct, they're not really willing to change it so much because they have a ton of experience. They're not just throwing this out there.
No.
Question, are there bad appraisers? Poor opinions, sour grapes, I guess like you said, if the ones they're comparing them to, across the board, it's not gonna affect yours so much. They're the same, if they judge everything with the same opinion, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
that's where that comes into play, it's not gonna affect. so
As
much.
I would never, question the expertise or the integrity of another appraiser, just like
Right.
you wouldn't a realtor. Yet they may be more difficult to work with, they may have less experience, less training, you know.
But poor judgment, you know what I mean, when it comes to opinion versus facts, you know, the checklist, whether it's just, you
The
know.
ones I've seen that are a problem are when we get them from out of town, and like I've seen where they'll compare a house on the south side of town with a house on the north side of town, because they don't understand Springfield.
Okay.
And those you can usually fight, the bank will usually.
Yes,
pick up on
you can
that.
always question. I think with a lender, a lot of times, if they are familiar with the appraiser, they may not be willing to do anything, but if they are unfamiliar, or like I just said, if they come from out of town, I do not know why that is allowed.
I know.
It should not be allowed. You have to say that you, in other paperwork that goes within the appraisal report, you have to state that you are competent to work in this area and to do this
That
appraisal.
would make sense when it comes to opinion,
Right.
right?
And so I don't know why that someone from another town or another state even, sometimes in those borders, that is allowed to work or do an appraisal in an unfamiliar area, because it can create lots of problems. But now the room count is another thing. See it over to the far left, right in the middle, where it says above grade room count, gross living area. Okay, in that total, then bedrooms, then bathrooms. The total represents, you know, the total rooms that you're counting. And 3 of them or 4 of them are bedroom, and 2 or 2.5 are bath. Well, then it says gross living area. That is what is above grade. In other words, that does not include your square footage in the basement. And then see it just below it, it says basement and finished rooms below grade. So you have to say the size of the basement, what square footage of it is finished, and then you have to put the rooms. Fannie Mae calls everything that's not a bedroom or a bathroom recreation. So you have to say RR, 1 RR, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, or 1 bath, whatever it is. That's the way they have it set up. But a lot of times they will just see this total rooms, total baths, and bedrooms and baths, and the square footage, and they'll say, my goodness, no, I've got a lot more than that. Well, just below it tells you what more you've got. And then the functional utilities, that's just, does the rooms flow well? I mean, and the only time I ever come against that it's not average or function or good function is when somebody adds on, like in these old homes, and they'll take a bungalow and they'll just put a room out the back and then maybe another room. Well, and you have to go through a bedroom to get to it.
Yeah.
So that would affect, you know, function.
Would that just be a yes or a no on that?
You put either average, good, or, you know, poor, you know, or whatever word you want to use, below average.
So if you had one room like that, it would be for.
Well, if you have to go through a bedroom to get to a bedroom or another room, then yes, it would affect, and the way it would be affected was with your comparables. You would adjust, you know, that either up or down, you know. You would say, no, this one isn't better, the comparables are better than that one. It's difficult to find out what your comparable is. I mean, you, as a realtor, you're not gonna state you have access through one bedroom to get to the next bedroom, accesses through, because that might deter people from coming and looking at that house. So it's difficult sometimes to find it. Energy efficiency, that is just your, if it has air conditioning and furnace. And if you have forced air, and a lot of older homes don't have air conditioning, or they have window units, and you just put forced air, then slash, and you'd put WU, But primarily that's in little small bungalows in our area. And then you're talking about the garage, and you have to state, it'll be 2A or 2D, whether it's attached or detached. And if it's a really nice garage detached, I would not take away from it. But now, if it's just an old, a shed type thing with a door on it, then, but if it's you'd be surprised. Some homes are connected by a breezeway. The garage is. The design of the house, you'll have the house, and then there's a roof covered. But if it does not attach to the house, if you can't walk directly into the house out of your garage, then it's detached, even though the roof goes across it. So to me, that situation would not require an adjustment.
One more question, sorry.
That's okay.
How about if the garage is deeper? I don't see anywhere where that.
It's a problem, yes, and I understand what you're saying, because if one can house a boat on one side, but it's the square footage overall, and it's the doors. Fannie Mae says, how many overhead doors do you have and how many cars can pull into it? Then that's what you have to count. You cannot count tandem garages where you could pull in and go all the way up and then pull another one in behind.
So that's one spot, even though you could get 2 full cars in.
So you kind of do the 2-car versus the 3.
Yes,
Yeah.
if there's
So
just
you'll take
2
value
open.
away if you're all your other cars.
Yeah.
Real 3-car.
Typically, when you have that, you'll have the 2-car, and then you'll have a single, and then you can go all the way back. But you would say, you can mention that in here, but typically you would not adjust for it, even though it might be a great market appeal. You can say single bay with, has a deep, it's deep and for storage or both. You can say, but you would not. They would not allow you to do that. It's all, the openings is all they're concerned about.
If I saw one with a pull-through, maybe you could get 2 cars, but there's another door on the other side, would that be considered 2?
Only if it had a driveway that went around and pulled into it. You must have a driveway access. I see a lot of realtors say, 2 cars and 1 detached. Well, it's actually a shop, or, a shed that has a door, and there's no way to get there. You may have a wood privacy fence. You must have a driveway that a car can drive to that area, or to that building and pull into, before it can be considered a garage.
Hey, Joyce, I just want to clarify something about, like, when we talk about Fannie Mae.
I know.
When we're talking about, but they are the secondary market. They're the ones that are buying the mortgages from the other people. So that's why they're ending up with that liability, and that's why they control basically.
They control
the
appraisals. They control the appraisal world, 100%. They tell you what you can and what you can't do, how far the septic, has to be from the well. They tell you. The only thing they do not control is the adjustments, like what adjustment you want to make for the difference in two properties. They don't tell you what to do that, but they tell you a lot. And I'm sorry, even if it's a refinance or even if it is for an individual, you have to follow their rules. Now, if I did an appraisal for a trust company, I could not use a Fannie Mae form. I would have to use what they call a general purpose form. That general purpose form has all the same information, but it doesn't have a Fannie Mae down at the bottom. It'll say Fannie Mae form number. So they don't want anybody using their form, but in order to do you have to put down the same information, and they've just patterned them all to Fannie Mae. So, and then you have to, the very last thing here, you have to say, I did or did not research the transfer. They want to know what, if a house, if it's the subject, they want to know in the last 3 years if it sold and what it sold for. So you have to put that, it says date of prior sale, price, or what source did you use, and when did you find that out? And then on the comparables, they want to know if it sold within 1 year prior to the above sale. Like FHA, you have to own a house for a certain amount of time, 90 days, to resell it, for it to be refinanced.
And if they did not put the sold price in the MLS?
If you do not, then you put a sale sign, then you put 0. And then down below here, you say, Missouri is an undisclosed state, so therefore, price was not revealed.
And it wouldn't, so you wouldn't put like, we're listed at.
You
nothing like that,
can,
just-
I do.
Okay.
I do say, property was listed at, but sale price was not undisclosed. So it kind of gives them, and if it was remodeled, I also say, prior to last sale, which sold, say, like 125, property was totally remodeled, therefore, the prior sale price does not reflect present value.
So how far back do they want you to put, disclose those sales?
Uh,
You say,
the subject, they want to know how 3 years,
oh, the subject,
but the comparable 1 year.
but like if that house sold 3 or 4 times, you have to
You have to
disclose all
list it.
that? Oh,
Yes. And then you do your summary. Well, you do your analysis of all that of the prior sales. Then you do your summary and explain why you chose the value that you did, because it's all adjusted out after all your adjustments up there. And hopefully a couple of them will support. Now this is just 3 comparables. Never, ever, ever have I turned in a report with 3 comparables. I mean, you can go 4, 5, 6. I always do at least 4. And then there is active listings. There is another one that you have to do. You have to have at least 2, pending sales or active listings. You preferably want pending because it shows that price went quickly, is under contract. Somebody else is going to buy. And these have to be just like the comparables. And you have to adjust them out. And they are supposed to support your value. And they also do something else. They show, if you say that you have an increasing market, then those active or pending sales should be higher. They should be.
Are you having trouble showing active sales? We're having
No.
trouble finding them.
Well, I do sometimes. There have been times when and I will just state, this is a similar house, although it's considerable distance. In my opinion, it has a similar neighborhood, but it's 3 miles away. But it is under the contract for this. It's just like your comparables when you can't find those and you have to extend out. But that's the same rules for active and pending sales.
Would an appraiser in this market be more likely to, because I know previously they would just extend the time frames out, go a little further out. But now that doesn't work because the prices are so different, would they be more likely to go further out in distance first
Yes.
rather than time?
Yes, and you can when we go back up where I said the time section, date of sale, and then there's slash time. Well, if you have to use a sale that sold you can go back 12 months. They want two within 90 days, but you can on the others. But if you had to go back 11 months, as you know that that's going to be a lower price sale, you can do a time adjustment. And you can figure out what percentage is it increasing.
Okay.
And then you multiply the difference in the months and you plus up in the time.
And where do you guys get that information? Where could we find that?
Well, it's just like, it is there in MLS. If you just research, time slots and just put in 2,000 square foot or whatever, and you sort of research, you can see that they're selling for more and more and more. There is an analysis section.
So you do
MLS.
do a mathematical computation to come up with what the value increase should be. It's not
Yes.
a guess.
No,
Right, you're just saying if it's sold at this time, that the market increased 3% over
or
this time.
5% or.
For that neighborhood?
Yeah, for that neighborhood. You must stay within that neighborhood. And they do have a section, it says neighborhood analysis, and you can figure it out. And I always do that a lot. There is appraisers who do not do time adjustments, but I think it's very important to arrive at a current value. I know you've had, when it was just crazy, they were increasing every 30 days. And new construction is a prime example of that. These builders, they will start something, and then the material has just keeps rising and rising. And so they have to up the price. And that's a nightmare for an appraiser too.
Do they have to show you, like, so say lumber doubled tomorrow, and if they show you what, like, receipts, what they're paying for it, does the appraiser take that into consideration if they can show you?
Yes, the problem with it is, and that's why you do this time, because you can't, no new construction is going to show you his receipts and all that. He'll tell you, but we're dealing historically all the time, and it makes it very difficult. That is why it's my opinion that time adjustments in a market like we're experiencing now, it's imperative that they be made so that you can bring that property up to what it would sell for today versus 9 months ago. And then it's a good comparable.
And sometimes finding the comparables in this case can be difficult. If you get out into a rural area, there's
So difficult.
there's not a lot of comps. You have to take that older comp and adjust it up
You
until you
do.
have an opportunity to do the appraisal.
Yes.
Sometimes we get stuck in like everything's a subdivision and there's a bunch of comps, and it's not the case.
No.
How are you making adjustments for comparables when a lot of the listings are so inaccurate and not filled out completely and the pictures are horrible?
Yeah.
So how do you make an adjustment when you have a picture of the front of the house, no back of the house, no interior?
Well, that should, in my opinion, a realtor should be held accountable for that. They should not be allowed to do that. But if it is, you call them. You call the listing realtor and you ask. A lot of them, there is a few that just will not help you at all. But then you try to find an old appraisal. We do have appraisal data banks where an appraisal will send in their appraisal as far as, they don't send in the price, they send in the room count, all that, and the condition, and then you can look back and find it. We call each other. We have a appraisal website. We say, did anybody appraise this property at any point, and they'll give you a call, or you'll call them, and they'll just say, call me, or whatever.
I have one more question. So would it be out of line if, obviously we don't just guess at what we're listing at. So would it be out of line if we took the 4 comps that we used and knew the conditions and left that at the house? So when you
Yes,
came to do the appraisal?
absolutely. Do whatever you think would help, in case you get someone who does not have the experience that is required or should be required. Maybe they're a trainee. After a certain length of time, a trainee is allowed to go out on their own after a certain length of time. And maybe they miss something. Any information that you leave, even your spreadsheets where you're just giving all the things, features about it. I always pick them up, just in case I didn't see something. Maybe I missed something as obvious as central vac. Somebody might miss that they don't look around and see the outlets. And if it says in your listing, central vac, you go, oh, wow, So, but it can get ugly in the appraisal business when an appraiser, maybe they find like the water heater doesn't have a pan or isn't properly. That comes into play when it's an FHA. They have requirements above and beyond the conventional.
I have one more question. So on these outbuildings, these are things that agitate me. On the outbuildings, I had a particular farm that had a $70,000 building put on it less than 2 years ago. It gave virtually no value to that. I even had the receipts there. That's a little bit frustrating.
It is.
And I'm wondering, is there a base number that you use for, like, in these rural properties, there's so many like 30 by 40 farms, and they give $5,000 for them, and it costs $40,000 to build a barn. Is there a number that you use for outbuildings when you're looking at them? Do you have a set number, or how do you use that math?
Okay, if your subject has an outbuilding, you try your best to find other homes with outbuildings, and then you can adjust in the difference in the square footage and the quality. And you can do that. If it has no outbuilding, again, depends on the size, and if you can prove that building. Fannie Mae limits you, just like they do with a swimming pool, as to what contributory value you can give. I would say that $70,000 outbuilding is probably not going to have any more contributory value than, say, $15,000, unless you were in our area. If you were working in the rural, all of them are going to have outbuildings, so it would be easy just to compare the difference and make the adjustments. If there is no outbuilding, then they limit you.
Because one outbuilding, they have, like you said, be 30 by 40 with concrete floors, which
Yes.
costs a whole lot more.
Yes.
Versus one that just has the dirt floors or whatever. Right.
And the
So,
height.
and do you change any value there?
Yes. Oh, that's what I'm saying. You compare the qualities, and you should be adjusting that for that. Swimming pools in our area, Fannie Mae pretty much thinks they have no value. If you were in Phoenix or somewhere in California or Sarasota, wherever, then almost every home would have in a certain neighborhood, and then you would just adjust the difference in the quality. But here, they say they're have limited usage per year, and they can be detrimental as to someone in an area with limited usage as to whether they wanted to maintain it and spend the money on it, So if a person builds a pool, they have to keep in mind, but of course they don't know about the appraisal, that they should keep in mind that it's for their personal use and their enjoyment, and they're not going to get the return they want.
And I think that's still like with the outbuildings. If you put in a $70,000 outbuilding, no one needs to come make you whole because you spent $70,000.
Exactly.
You have an overbuilt custom home that's built for you, and you paid $2.5 million to have it built. You're probably not going to get $2.5 million out of it when it goes to resell because it was built for you. And what you get was that enjoyment of it, and you got to take the loss on the value.
Yeah, and they will stay. Say somebody has in a neighborhood of price ranges from 200 to 400, and somebody comes in and builds this, and builds a $600,000-700,000 home, that home would be considered in appraisal world an over improvement for the area, because you could not find another house in their neighborhood or extended area with that same value. And so they probably will not get their money back, because who's going to buy that when they are surrounded by lesser values?
What are some of the smallest things and the largest things that a homeowner could do to increase the value the greatest?
Improvements,
Right,
know.
what type?
a kitchen, bathroom,
Kitchen and bath,
flooring.
flooring.
But again, you're not gonna get dollar for dollar.
You're not gonna get dollar for dollar,
Right.
but that,
It brings up the effective age.
yeah, it brings the effective way up, and so therefore you'll try to adjust it. Use homes, if you can find them, that are newer than your subject, that, and compare it to them, because that's where it belongs, because it's been updated.
Does Fannie Mae have any guideline on solar panels?
Heck, yeah.
You knew you were gonna get hit with that.
Solar panels can be very problematic for our area, because we don't have the sun to support them. And also, the solar panel companies come in and sell someone solar panels, and they're making payments on them.
Mhm.
Okay, if they decide to sell their home, they're still making payments. The only thing that can happen is they still owe that company. If the buyer wants to take over those payments, you've got no problem. But if the buyer says, I'm not paying that, I want them gone, then the person that put those, the seller that put them on is gonna have to take them off and take them with them.
And fix the roof.
Yes, and fix the roof, because they are not, if you can't sell, they're not included in the value, and you can't sell solar panels. And the mortgage company, in fact, the lender is probably going to want a lease, a release from the solar panel company, saying, because they're gonna have a lien on that property.
But I mean, if they're paid off though, and we're trying to figure out, like, we've got all these comparable sales that don't have solar panels, and then I have a house that I know that they paid $40,000 for solar panels and they're paid for it. What value should we attach to that?
Probably little to none, unless you're in a neighborhood of solar panel homes, and you can find comparable and see that they sold for more. If you've got one, one without, one with it, what was the price difference? Was there any? And if there isn't, then you're back to outbuildings and swimming pools.
I saw one where they actually took value off because it was an eyesore, because they put them on the front of the house. So they decreased the value of that. I have a question for you about the outbuildings. So what if, and we see this a lot, they put a little room in there that's got a bathroom, air conditioner,
Mhm.
and an outbuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drywall, like a
I
little
know, and it's really nice.
Mhm.
You would, as an appraiser, I would try to find a comparable that had something similar to it, maybe even heat and air, because these guys will also do large outbuildings for cars, and they will put heat and air in it. Well, then you could see, you would try to find that and equal it out as far as value. And then you would just say, you probably wouldn't give it over. If you had one and it was insulated and it was the same size or near the same size, and here's one that has, a bath, and if it's sheetrocked and a little, you probably wouldn't give it over $5,000.
Have you seen very many of those?
No,
And well, we're starting to see shelters
I
too.
know.
Yes.
So that's gonna be a whole other,
It is, and you have to, if you're doing a Shell's house, you have to compare them to Shell's houses. And you'll have to be going along
I would
this.
say, would you just
You'd
open up the parameters?
You would,
where
and you
everyone-
would just have to say that it is a coming trend, but there is none available, so therefore you just have to go out as far. I mean, I see this on the appraisal website. Anybody down the south, because it's really, really hard, really, really
I
hard.
think that's a great point that you make, is like the peer network within the appraiser community is very strong. If you don't know something, you don't understand something, you can connect with a bunch of other people and
Yeah.
usually get a good answer from somebody that has experience with
That's
it.
right, and it's a lifesaver. Okay, I don't know where we are time-wise, but Fannie Mae has made a decision as of January that they are going to install or into the process of appraisers, what they call a desktop appraisal. Before this, desktop appraisals were only used for reviews. A desktop is where you do not see the property. You do not go out. You can pull up the information on the assessor. You do not even go out there. If you want to drive by, but they're saying you can do it desktop. The one kicker, and I was talking to Art about it, is they want the appraiser to put a floor plan in there, even though they have never been to the property, don't see it. They want them to have a floor plan. So, where does the appraiser get the floor plan? And it's, you would have to ask the homeowner. They may they may hire someone to go out there, which I think is foolish because that would increase the cost. I think it opens up a nightmare because you don't know the condition. Someone could have a big hole in the wall, they could have leaking plumbing, they could have anything and you wouldn't know it. You have to totally rely on the homeowner to be honest with you about what's
So when
in their
you're saying
home.
floor plan, you're not talking about an exterior drawing like you can get up from the courthouse.
You have to place the room.
room.
Yeah, because I heard.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry. Is there another question?
Hey. This is
I'm sorry.
maybe off the subject, who's talking? You. Anyone else talking? Oh, who's
I was
talking? Go ahead.
gonna try.
Go ahead.
Kurt.
Okay, so, you get a low appraisal. Etiquette-wise, protocol, is it different between FHA, VA, 95 conventional, or conventional? I'll just tell you what, probably not to do. I had one come in where they had made a couple of obvious mistakes, and so I just copied the bank and copied the appraiser to bring it to their attention.
Yes.
And so the bank was not very cooperative, the appraisal came in short, and I think the loan officer decided that we were going to shove that down the seller's throat. And so he wouldn't even let me talk to the underwriter. They said the buyer had to ask all these questions and be in control of the asking with the appraiser, with the underwriter. And so my seller basically just said, see you later, and we went and sold it the next day. But have you got to go encourage the buyer to say, hey, you want this house, you need to, and then the other thing, the appraiser said, well, I just want new comps. Well, so just fix the ones you got, you'll be okay. But that's another, just, I know what I do, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There's good appraisers, and if you bring an obvious human mistake here to vision, they thank you, and I'll take care of that.
Yeah,
Because people make mistakes, get in a hurry.
absolutely.
You're a lot of times, you're dependent on some of these, agents that got risk reduction in their eyes, and they don't give you very good pictures and no room measurements, so you get out there and it's a 12 by 13 master bedroom, and you wonder, now you know why it's been on the market for 2 months, because that was a $400,000 house. But I guess just if you want to school them a little bit on what they should do if they see, or the appraiser missed something. There was a couple of sales right in the subdivision that they did not use. And you're like, okay, why didn't you use these? So you tell from the appraiser side what you like to see and what you don't like to see.
Well, if I make a mistake, if I did something, missed something, I would want that either the listing or the selling or both, whatever, to let me know. Because like you said, we're all human, we can make mistakes. The sad part about what they have put into place with the relationship and the communication, they limit it. A loan officer cannot talk to an appraiser. The appraiser has to ask the processor, and then the processor talks to the lender and gets whatever answer, and then it goes, that is an unnecessary step, in my opinion.
But the realtors can talk to you?
Yes, I have realtors call me. I've had realtors say, look, I don't understand, this one, and I should have the answer that explains it. Why, that you didn't use that one. We are limited to square footage as to we have to stay within a certain, square footage difference. You can't just say, okay, this one's 1,200 square feet, and I'm gonna compare it to a 2,000 square foot house. You can't do that, because it's not apples and apples. So your comparables must be similar to and as much like, they can have a lot of differences, but they need to be similar square footage, similar bedroom count, bathroom count. You can't adjust you do not adjust for bedroom count, because in today's world, you can use a room for whatever you want to use it for, or like a dining room, but square footage is big. But I always welcome, if somebody calls me and says, I don't know why you didn't use this, then I'll look it up, and if I missed it somehow, because I don't know about you guys, but when you do a search, sometimes it doesn't always come up the same. You don't always pull the same things. So there is possibility that you could miss something. I try to run them several times in different ways, like square footage, time of sale, whatever, and it'll pull them. But in my opinion, if you get something, you should contact the lender and show them why. And like you did, Kurt, you said, here's what I think was wrong. Does those errors make enough difference to change the value? If they do, then I think any lender should look at it. Any loan officer should.
I got another question. So in the city, sold radiuses, is there a hard and fast on 1, 2 mile, 3 mile radius versus suburbans that are 10 to 15 miles out versus suburbans that are 30 miles out?
Yes.
Okay.
They say they want, if you're doing a neighborhood, just a subdivision, they want you to have a radius no larger than a mile. And in suburban, you can go 5 miles. In rural, you can go 10, 15.
You probably ask for them.
And normally it would be necessary. Because in the rural, homes are so very, so diverse. people, buy acreage, they build what they wanna build. So having something similar is gonna be hard.
So, another thing that we'll run into occasionally is maybe you've got, a particular floor plan, say an in-ground basement in whatever school district.
Right.
And there are no other, in 12 months even, in-grounders of that age, 1967 or something is what I just ran into. So I was lucky on that one. There was 3 in that school district, but had I been looking in about any other school district, there was hardly any on acreage, or small acreage. So could you ever say, okay, we'll go from Willard to Hillcrest, Fair Grove, here's some very similar houses, they're outside of that 5 miles, and they're like identical houses, maybe their effective age and actual age is the same, or one thing or another. Sometimes that's what I'll do, is say, here's what people have been paying for these kinds of houses within a 10-mile radius of, I want to do it 2 different ways, like these would compete if somebody was just looking at that product versus that distance thing. Sometimes that distance thing really kind of holds you back.
Okay, Kurt, it would depend on whether that was a Willard property in a subdivision. Then if it's a Willard property in a subdivision, you're gonna have to stay within the Willard. You can go, Willard, you can go outside, as long as it's in the Willard School District. Sometimes you'll get a different address, but the school district's the same. You have to stay within that school district. And I know that's hard. I believe me, I understand. But that's what they're gonna require. In the city, in here, you're gonna go the same, zip code. I know that in the zip code goes this way, and so you can't go, but because you have to stay within a radius, you're not gonna be comparing west to east. But they kind of look at those zip codes too. The whole process can be very, very difficult.
You said something a moment ago about well, this form seems very simple. You said, and that's what it was, if somebody called you, a realtor called you and asked, hey, why did you do this? You should already have the answer, because this form is not your complete file.
No.
Right? How big of a file do you have after you've researched the property, you've done everything, combined all the information? So if they called you and said that, you could probably say, hey, that's really not a comp because the square footage differential,
Right.
It doesn't allow that to be a comp. And if you have that answer right then, because your file, how big would a file be on a
Well,
typical?
it could vary, but you've got to have in your file, due to audits, you have to have all the comp pages, the comps of the pages and the difference. You have to have your tax records. You have to have all of that. Some people get confused. They'll say, why didn't you use this? Well, maybe it was a basement home. And they realize, well, I'm doing a crawl space. I can't compare a basement home with a crawl space. Or you try not to even go story and a halves. You try to have that same design. But the file can be whatever. It can be 10 pages. It can be 20, or depending on what's needed and how many comparables you put in there. I'm uncomfortable with 3, unless they were just absolutely pristine and they were so similar that there's no denying that that's where that price range is. I like to have at least 4. And reviewers, if you only put 3 comps in, they'd want 3 pending sales, because they're going to say, hey, this didn't prove anything to me. I want to know this. And it's just, that's why I try to give enough information that someone can look at this and know why I thought I came up with this conclusion. And that's what you have to explain in that report. How did you come up with this? And you have to be able for somebody to read it and say, yeah, that makes sense to me, and I agree with that. And if you don't give enough information, you open yourself up to a lot of questions.
And I understand that, like in the appraisal world, when it goes to review, you have peers that would review the work, and if they find anything is wrong, sometimes if you did it and it was intentional, it's fraud. You lose your
Absolutely.
license, you lose your
Yes.
ability to do your business, and you can go to jail.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's not
true.
like being a realtor where you make a mistake and do E&O and, you know. pay up and you're done.
Exactly. It's,
There's consequences to
yeah,
it.
the appraisal world, I mean, you have a lot longer, like Art was saying, years of training. And your education is a lot more. And your renewal education is a lot more. And to renew price-wise is a lot more. You know, you're gonna have to pay, you know, $400 every 2 years.
How
And then
many
you're
more
gonna-
years before we really have a shortage of appraisers?
Not very long.
Right now, don't we?
They have, because we were talking about that. There is no one willing to take in a trainee because the amount of time. First, you have to take a class, and you have to keep a record of every single thing you do. And you have to review everything. You have to go, at the beginning, you have to go with them. Well, if you do that, how much time do you have to do an appraisal yourself? And that's the problem. We need a better way of training.
And you're training your competition.
You are,
Competition,
because,
So a lot of them
yes.
don't wanna do it.
I've had,
It's ridiculous.
in the beginning, I took on 5 different appraisers. Every one of them left and went to work for themselves, which I knew would happen. When I was trained, I worked for an individual with the understanding, as soon as I could get my license and my experience, I would leave. Because if you don't know that up front, it's not fair. But it's the time that it requires and the cost to the appraiser, why so many don't take on
Is it
trainees.
legal for an appraiser to be paid to provide that training and that
Oh.
apprenticeship?
Well, you don't, what happens is if you take on a trainee, you would pay them for the amount of work they do. And as they become more experienced and can do it, then you increase their salary until till finally, they would either leave or, you know, you're realizing very little, you know, because that's only fair, in my opinion. I don't,
Stacy Bruce is in here.
yeah,
That's why she's in Florida.
yeah.
And she's been around a long time too.
Any other questions?
One last question.
Okay,
No.
Eric.
She's first.
Oh, did you?
I actually have a whole list of questions, but I can talk to you after class. Can you use cash sales for comps in your appraisals?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, those are the best.
There are so many. There is so many cash
Yeah.
sales. Absolutely, as long as they're in the MLS and but having a cash sale doesn't necessarily mean that the price isn't disclosed.
Right.
Now, in my opinion, the appraiser should be exempt in MLS from knowing what the sale price was. Because where are you gonna get your comps? Especially in your million-plus homes. They don't want them revealed. Well, you can't use them if you can't find out the sale price. And so we have very few of them in the first place.
But if you got, approval from your buyer to say, hey, an appraiser called and she really needs this comp, with their
Yes.
approval, you could give it.
Yes,
Right?
yeah, I will call a realtor and I'll say, hey, Judy Huntsman, this is what she used to do for me. I don't know what she did, but she would say, if I call, she'll say, okay, call Donna. Donna would say, okay, it didn't sell for $199.9, but it didn't sell for $200,000. Something, you know. She would give you down to $10, you know, down to where there was no question. And so therefore, she wasn't breaking the rules, but yet I got what I wanted. I don't know how many do that. There is a large company in town who advises their seller or buyer to not disclose. they don't understand how difficult that makes it.
They're only hurting themselves.
They are.
Because we can't raise the prices if we don't have any houses.
I know, but you know who it is, and so it's very difficult.
The same with the advice for people not to go to the inspection.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is. Can you tell me who it's not?
Too many.
Who did the Donna thing?
Yeah.
So, to aid you to police the appraisal industry, if, you know, and I think the realtors don't police themselves very well, either, and probably doctors and lawyers don't either, but who's the oversight that you would, in writing, complain to or give a copy of the appraisal if you really just legitimately had a bad appraisal, and maybe it's happened 2 or 3 times, not just one time? Who's the final oversight you might share?
You report it to the Appraisal Real Estate Commission. They will look at it. They will not get involved in if you just don't like the appraised amount. But if you can show that that appraised amount doesn't make any sense, they'll take a look at it, and they will call that appraiser, and they will be held accountable. They can be put on suspension, they can be fined, they can lose their license.
But
Well,
it
you know-
doesn't help in the process because I've had to go through this, and that's a long process.
Right.
The house is already closed.
Right.
I had an appraiser that mixed up the subject house with the first comparable,
Oh, wow.
and would not change it.
Oh, no.
And,
I don't understand that, because there's no
he said
integrity.
it was a VA loan, so he would not change it because it was a ding, right?
Yes, it is,
Mhm.
on the VA. VA is kind of a different animal than all other appraisals. And he didn't want to, because he could lose his ability to do VA.
But it's wrong.
It's very
I
wrong.
know, I
I
told
mean,
her how to
it's,
just
I mean,
eat
it's
it.
just not opinion, it was incorrect, so how?
It was
do you
incorrect.
correct
He had, the house next door was vacant and it had been a rental and it was for sale too. And he went in the wrong house. And he went in that one and used that one
it?
as a subject and then decreased the price of my seller's house. Yeah, they just had to eat it.
Can you request second appraisal in that kind of place?
Well, you can certainly request, and it's up to, it would be up to VA, and it would be up to your loan officer in a conventional situation. Or FHA, you know, if a local loan officer's handling that. You can, but it is at their discretion as to whether they want to do it. That, I don't, you know, can't remember, but if I've ever had that, anybody question, if I've made an error, they might look at it. I think, if I remember, once, I remember I put the parcel number and I had a typo. Instead of a 9, I put a 0. And that, you know, if you just call, that has nothing to do with the value or anything else. But
But you went in the wrong house, and you
Whoa.
wrote the wrong.
Why would you not correct it?
And if they refuse to correct it, could you contact, what was it, VA, FHA, what was it?
You could not only that, but the real estate commission could be contacted on that.
Yeah.
And of
Like I
course, that,
said, the part, it was closing, it was, you know, done a week, turn in a week before, my seller had to move, but even when reporting it to the real estate commission, nothing ever happened.
Yeah, they have an
That guy
appraisal,
still does appraisals.
they have an appraisal commission, they have a real estate commission, they have a bunch of departments of the government.
Yeah.
But they all pretty much have the same types of rules. They have to put out what the rules are. And then if there's a complaint, they must follow up on the complaint. It doesn't matter if it's from another person within the business, if it's a person from the general public, it doesn't matter. Anytime, it could be an anonymous complaint and they have to follow up on it. So anyone can make an anonymous complaint on you to the Missouri Real Estate Commission, and they're gonna do an investigation. And if there's and I don't know how many people make anonymous complaints to the Appraisal Commission.
I don't know
But-
either, but you've got to have, they've got to look at the appraisal, and they've got to, they have a review, and believe me, those people are extremely experienced. They know, and you have to you're held
Yeah,
accountable.
they're appointed by the governor, so the governor
Yes.
has a pretty deep reach and they get the right people on the commission.
Mhm. And they always have an appraisal on the commission.
Did you go ahead and close on that close?
Almost what?
We have no
Okay.
choice.
What if their financing would have fallen through because of it?
Just depends on the contract.
I know, but.
Oh, the buyer was happy, he got a much lower price.
Right.
They have changed the. Hey, Joyce, if you have all brick versus say brick front, three sides vinyl, how much are you gonna take off of, say, a 2,000 square foot house?
About 2,500.
What was the
So you
question?
don't get that much.
Yeah,
more.
Barbara, we can't hear you.
If you have an all brick, say 2,000 square foot house built in around 1985, 90, I was asking her if you have comms, but you can, yours is an all brick, but you got really good comms, but you find out they only have brick front, vinyl on three sides. She said she's only not giving 2,500.
Just for because of
I thought it'd
it,
be more.
yeah, only, not in that price range, I mean, if you have another, but think about so many vinyls, and then the brick has to be, as it ages, you have to regrout, you get
Okay.
cracks, you get this or that. So typically, I mean, if it was totally vinyl and in here, a small house like that, totally vinyl and all brick, maybe 5,
That'd be on the high side.
Yeah.
Okay.
would be 5,000. But if it has a brick front and then 3 sides vinyl,
How about a brand new roof?
well, it's gonna go to effective age.
Yeah.
You're not gonna adjust just for the roof, you're just gonna adjust for the effective age.
So the whole house wouldn't change the effective age on the whole house.
No, you would report it and say, yeah, it depends on the age, because you have to have a new roof when it wears out.
Yeah.
It's like you have to have new tires.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is maintaining.
So it's not really an increase.
Not really an improvement or
It's a necessity. And a lot of times the roofs are paid for by the insurance company.
But if your comparables all have old roofs.
But as long as they're functional, you don't give any.
They'll have conditions.
Yeah, if they're still functioning and they have you don't know, and you don't know. That's why I always look at the disclosures
Okay.
that people make. So I know what's been replaced. If they're smart, the realtor will say, be sure you say when your roof was replaced, if it was replaced, that your appliances were replaced. Because sometimes the realtor may not list that,
90% of the time, they are not putting HVAC.
They don't ask.
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah, you gotta be careful too, because the sellers will tell you, I got a brand new roof and it's 7 years
Yeah.
old. It's not a brand new roof. It's-
Yeah.
So when
Yeah,
did
they
you
always do
replace it?
that, yeah.
Roof was replaced at this year.
Yeah, I know.
It has a
What
new
year?
roof.
And when I go in, when the person goes in, you ask them, has your roof been replaced? What about your furniture and your air conditioner? What about your floors? What have you done the last 5 years? I mean, you ask them all of that. You ask them.
The older you get, the sooner that seems. So I remodeled my bathroom last year, but it's been 5 years ago. The older you get,
That's
5 years
true,
ago
that's
was just
true.
the other day.
That's true.
I had one house that took me over a year to get the bathroom finished.
Can you go over real quick, can you go over real quick government loans? Can you go over really quick the government loans and, like, how much life is supposed to be left on roofs and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, it has to be, you have to have 5 years left.
But how do you as an appraiser determine that?
I cannot.
So.
And that will come from the home inspection.
I know, but so you look at the home inspection, or what do you mean?
The home inspector has to report the life of the roof. You have to look, you can look at the roof and see if there's 3 layers or whatever, but there is no way that you have that kind of expertise.
I know, so I'm saying though, what do you do? Like if you're, so this is why I'm asking these questions, because there's like, I just see so much inconsistency, like I'll have a listing and I'll be like, oh, this roof is really old, I'm just forewarning you, you're probably gonna have to replace this roof if you get a government loan. Lo and behold, we get a government loan. I mean, this roof looks bad to me. And we get a USDA, I think, and they don't ask us to replace the roof. I honestly don't even know how she got the house insured. And then I have a different one where, I just don't understand, like, why the appraiser didn't call that out. So do you write that on your appraisal and then that alerts the lender and then the lender has to ask so how does that?
No, because if you see no leaks, if the roof could be 20 years old, but if it's still sound and it's not leaking anywhere, there is no way you can adjust for that.
I know, but what I'm saying is though, the inspector doesn't.
I think where you're getting at is there's an underwriter that looks over every single one of these.
Yeah,
and the underwriter will determine whether or not
Yes.
they need that effective age. And then they're gonna make that one of the buyer's inspections that have to be done. So you're gonna have to hire a roofing company to come out and give an inspection to
So-
that and provide that to the underwriter so that it either meets the requirement or it doesn't meet the
So
requirement.
basically, it's the buyer's agent that's gonna point it out to the lender then if the.
No, I think the underwriting requirements for that type of loan, that underwriter will look at it, and if they are suspect about the age of the roof, or that needs to be one of the things to make it acceptable for that government program, they'll require it. And when you read in our contract, it says inspections that the buyer or the buyer's lender may require.
Right.
So
So you have
the
an
lender is
underwriter.
going to look at what though? So he's not gonna look at the appraisal for that age of the roof? What is he
No,
gonna
no.
ask for because he doesn't see the disclosures?
The underwriter looks at the appraisal, they look at if the inspection reports are sent in, they look at the contract, they look at multiple things. And depending upon if they're underwriting for, say, a portfolio loan, a conventional loan, or they're going to, or a secondary market loan like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, they'll have different underwriting requirements. And it's the underwriter's responsibility to make sure they get the information to protect that investor. So it would be the underwriter who would make that decision. And the loan program, depending upon who the underwriter is and what the loan program is, then there could be little differences like that. But it's the underwriter that makes sure that the
Okay.
loan
So
requirements.
when we're listing houses, what should we be, when we're looking at them getting a government loan offer, what should we be looking for? Because I've had some other ones like, I had a $100,000 barn on a property that had, like really nice property, had a little bit of peeling paint around the trim of all the doors of these two $100,000 barns shops. And they called that out on the VA and made them, do that. And then I have another government loan where the entire old barn built in 1940 needed to be repainted. It had peeling paint everywhere. And they didn't so I'm letting everybody know, this is probably gonna have to all be done. They didn't ask for anything.
The appraiser should have noted that there was peeling paint. They should have made a statement. There was peeling paint. If it was a government loan, an FHA, the appraiser can require that the building be repainted. Either the house, if it's an older home, prior to lead paint, it has to be of an age prior to the lead paint, and if it's possible that was lead paint, then the appraiser can say peeling paint on the outbuilding or the house, and say should be repainted.
Only
Right.
if it's older than
Yeah, if it's just peeling, say the house was built in 1985 and it's just peeling, it doesn't affect the livability. It would affect the condition and the effective age, but it doesn't affect the livability. And most government, like USDA, all they want to know is this house livable? It doesn't have anything that distracts from safety rules, and that's true.
So you're saying if it was built in 1999 and it has peeling paint, then they should not be asking for that to be
No,
done, because they are.
They do.
They
all
are,
do,
like I'm
yeah.
shocked that you're
They'll make
saying
you
that,
detach
because they
that
are.
Piece this big.
Well,
Peeling paint on a barn.
yeah.
But that was something that wasn't clear to me because I know a lot of times that the FHA required if there's any improvement that has peeling paint,
even
But
out.
so I see what you're saying now, so it's really only to there, some can.
Prior to, is it 1978?
Yeah, 78,
I
yeah,
think
anything
when I
built
get
prior to
What
78.
I get confused on, like, I'm listing a property, like, the house is really nice and everything, but they have a barn on it that's, it's a barn that was built in 1940, and it has,
Cool, but-
it's there structurally, it's fine, but it's got peeling paint, it's got a little rotted wood here and there. I can't, I'm trying to determine in my mind, am I okay to say that that can go for government loan, or are they gonna make that whole thing be,
Well, there should be no requirement if it was built after 1978.
Yes, and that's the whole thing, we're just covering lead-based paint, because the reason we do that lead-based paint disclosure is because of, they require that.
but
And
I've had them
Yeah.
require paint tons of times when it was not built before 1978.
Well, that's not the protocol. I mean, that's not what,
To every single
Gotta tell them
one.
to call
Every
you.
day,
Yeah.
they look for the tiniest little chip. and
So
they-
But
what
seriously-
do you tell them? Just
Yeah.
say you never know what they could require of you.
Definitely a discrepancy within the.
And that's in the government loan
I have
writing,
another
that there's
question for
going to
you.
be an appraisal, and that appraiser may require
from the
verification.
outside,
I
because
think
that's what the
appraisers
assessor.
measure from the inside of the houses.
Oh,
And bring
the only
in
time you would
reference
measure, like if you had an upper area that you can't measure, of course, you can go outside and look and see how far over it goes, and when you've measured the below, you know what that is. But you go up and you have to measure from the inside, say it was a bonus room. And, but you add the outside walls,
Yeah.
6 inch for the outside wall.
We just have a refiner in our house and measure the inside.
From the whole, for the
So
outside,
we added on a whole big room and the square footage came in smaller.
well, that's ridiculous. I'm
know.
sorry, I don't
I know.
understand that. I would just say that the house was, I would call
Yeah.
and
I
just
mean, it didn't
say,
matter us as a pre-finance, but that's in our tax records now, so.
no, it won't
No,
be in
that's
your,
not
what
your
we,
tax record.
no, what we
That's
do
not
is
your
it never goes to the assessor.
No.
They never know about it
On a refi.
on
Or
anything.
anything, they don't.
Souls are that, they have no, because they don't belong to the MLS. We don't allow them.
That's why half of them are wrong.
Yeah,
So
they go out and do their own measuring and their own assessment and their own guess for the
The
other.
county assessor does?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's why I say you can't use that square footage.
The last
No.
appraisal, because I see that change all the time.
Don't use
Yeah.
anything from the appraiser except its
I don't think they
information.
are, I think they are pulling that stuff.
I don't know where they get it because they don't have any access to the banks, the lending. I have, there has been several incidents over the years where I have measured the house and the assessor records were totally wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will call them and I will send them my sketch and I said, you need to send somebody back out. This is what I measured.
That's nice.
You don't have it. So they thank me and they say, okay, we'll get someone to go. But they have multiple appraisers that have sections and they go out all the time and measure. And the problem I see is they don't do it often enough, and it's probably manpower because things change.
Joyce, is the 5-year roof life, is that on any kind of loan? Or is it-
Only government, only FHA or
Okay.
VA, yeah,
USDA.
USDA.
I still don't see how they determine, 4 years, 6 years.
And that has to come, all you would do as an appraiser
Uh-huh.
is say, the roof appears to be this, home inspection is recommended.
Okay.
Because you have no knowledge, you have no
We're not out there
expertise.
touching it, so.
Yeah, so you don't know.
To the roofer.
And
You
it's
have a
not our
roofer.
job.
I was just trying to ask who calls it out.
Right, right.
Can I also ask you, we have a lot of people listing houses lately as finished square feet, that is not finished square feet, and it's driving me crazy. Like, so like if you have a basement, like I had this one the other day, a basement that was listed as finished square footage, and it was concrete floor, concrete walls, had a ceiling in it, and had the great big HVAC, like right when you come down the stairs in the middle of the, in the middle of the room. It did have room partitions, it had like maybe a bedroom or two, So what would that have to have for you as an appraiser to call that a finished square footage?
Well, it has to be finished, it has to
But I
have
mean,
finished walls, ceilings, and floor.
So it has to have, so if
The
it,
same
what if it had
finish.
sheetrock walls, but it had concrete floor?
Well, then it's not finished.
It's not finished
Really?
yet.
What if it's a polished? They're doing a lot of polished concrete.
Well, that, on the concrete, that, if you do that, then that's finished, if the walls and the ceiling are all finished.
If they're all polished.
But welcome to my world.
Well,
No, thank you.
I mean, it just annoys me because it's like you go out there, you know, especially if they don't put pictures on them, don't put good pictures, or there aren't, you know, hard
I
pictures.
understand.
And you go out there thinking it's a 3,000 square foot house and it's a 1,500 square foot house that you could barely even make the basement livable because of the HVAC, humongous HVAC in the middle of the.
Or ceiling heights, or, you know.
Yeah,
there's
low
all
ceiling,
sorts.
this one had low ceiling, concrete floors, concrete walls, and it was listed as finished square foot.
Well, see, that's when we look at the listing. And it's incorrect. That's
That's the
very-
information you have.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's
that's
one
what I
thing
had.
too, I was gonna, one time, I think that you did an appraisal class at the board and you had mentioned, and I would love for everybody to know this, that you had said, you know, if you close a house before you close it and it's something unusual about it, like it sold in duress for some reason and it didn't sell at the price it normally would have sold at, basically, for us to put that in agent remarks so
absolutely.
that you guys could see it. And I mean, I do try to do that, but I think everybody should try to do that
Yeah.
because,
You don't want an appraiser using that as a comparable.
right, and or you want to explain why it sold for what it
Yeah,
it's sold for.
right. The more information you can put, it helps your fellow, you know, realtors, someone that's wanting to, you know, looking for a home, or for their buyer, and it helps the appraiser. The more you tell us, and I get comments like, well, I'm not gonna do your job for you. Well,
No,
I can do my
there's no
job better
Yeah.
with the more information you put, and also your buyers will be better
way-
informed.
Yeah, there's no way for you to know that unless
Yeah,
you are,
right.
I mean,
So,
Joyce, how far does the well have to be from the septic?
Say what?
it has to be 50 feet, but then the laterals have to be 100.
50 feet and the lateral's 100.
A bedroom that does not have a closet, but
It's
they
not a
leave a
bedroom.
wardrobe in it, a wardrobe thing.
Not a bedroom.
What if it's a closet that's built out with sheetrock, but it juts out into the room or the corner, or?
Well, yeah, that, I mean, as long as you can hang, if it's actually attached to the wall, and it has, you know, then it's.
And has a window. Right?
And the bedroom must have a window, yeah, must have a window, and the basement. But in the basement, when you have bedrooms with no windows, it does not take away from the value
If it's in the basement.
if it's in the basement.
So you can include it as a bedroom.
If
It
it's
has a
square,
closet
finished
and no
square
window.
footage, it's not a bedroom. It's
Yeah,
just a
you
room.
just say,
It's part of the room.
you know, fourth bedroom and basement does not have a window. Use this basement, but no window. You can say that. That just helps us not to put it in the room count in the basement.
Not
But we'll say it, if there's other, and we'd include it, we'd say 2 bedrooms and 1 other.
So we can,
You can
List
list
it
it that
as a
way,
four-bedroom.
but please explain that
Yeah.
it does not have the
it's not
window.
conventional.
Yeah, that's the way it should be done, you know.
If a house is livable or not, is it subjective to the appraiser's opinion, or is there like, yeah, it has heat, it has air, it has toilets, it has water, so therefore, check, it's livable?
Yes, well, it is, you know, it has to be heat, and it has to have air, it
I
has to
know.
have a commode, and it has to be safe. There can't be anything in there like rotting floors that somebody could fall through, or
Right.
that kind of thing. As
Ratty
far as
or
that's
tacky doesn't
USDA.
matter, So.
Yeah, just run down, or
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Did I hear you correctly that you said that when you're doing the square footage, the gross living area, you exclude the laundry room?
Well, not the
No.
square footage, in the room count you exclude.
You're only-
Only room count. It's include everything.
Did I?
No, yeah, everything. I mean, you measure the outside,
Okay.
and all of that is square footage, but when you're listing that room count, you just don't put it in there.
Joyce, when you're giving value, do you give as much value to above grade as you do basement?
No,
And
50% less.
50%, whether it's walkout or not walkout?
Yes, because Fannie Mae rule,
What if the ceilings are low?
Yeah, well,
And
yeah.
it's a basement, and there's like no window underground, would you still give it 50% or would you give it 25?
If you're saying that the ceilings are so low that it's not,
So they've redone the basement,
but
it's like no windows, it's all underground, the ceilings are low.
and can you,
Would you-
it's 7 foot, it has to be 7 foot, in order for FHA to, call it livable space, and so that's what I go by. And it's like the slope, of a bonus room. You can, and they'll take it all the way down to 3 feet or 4, that's not livable space.
I was,
That's the new question, right?
I was speaking with Denny, and he teaches the appraisal class over at Lifetime Learning, and he was explaining that the reason that the below grade didn't have the same value is because if you have grade plus all of the improvements, the ceiling, the roof, the attic, and the roof and all of the stuff on top of the grade costs money. You don't have that in the basement, right? You don't have that extra value, you just have the
What
cost.
about an earth home?
Oh.
What do they call them? Where you-
Burn homes, yeah.
There's a treat.
Yeah,
right.
you have to compare it to other burns.
Oh, yeah.
You can't use a, stick-built home, and compare it to earth
You
burn
can
home.
mow your roof.
So you would really have to go outside your area, that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you do, and they understand
And those are
that.
unique appraisal problems, and
They are.
and for the most part, if it's that unique and it's outside of your area of expertise, then you can just not accept the assignment. And somebody with the proper education in that unique property appraisal can do it.
So they did just do this change with the 7-foot rule, right? So a lot, you guys need to be aware when you're listing these little bungalow houses and Pickwick, and stuff, a lot of those have,
And you can only count, and when the appraiser comes in, he's only gonna count enough of where you can stand up.
7 feet is what?
Well, not 7, 7 was for the basement, no,
Okay.
you know, you would say,
The attic is.
6 foot, you know, it's gotta be where you can stand up and use it. And then you can give value, a contributory value to those
the spaces.
that are spaces, but yeah, you could add down at the bottom, you know, they have plenty of room to add other,
And just be
Comments.
at a less,
yes,
No.
yes. But you can add value, you can give value to the whole thing, you just gotta be able to use
You
that,
don't
you know,
use the floor measurement.
yeah. Don't use the floor, that's a good way of saying it. Guys,
Did
You
you
did a
bring
good
any
job.
cards? I need a appraiser.
no, I did not.
I'll send you her today.
Well, she doesn't have to do it.
That's it.
And you would write down, and I'll drive you there.
I'll send you her.
Actually, very soon.
She's actually in IQ office, she's a part of the office, she's in the roster, so all of
Okay.
the contact.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, Art,
Can we say happy birthday?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Yes, you can sing.
I don't
Yay.
Happy birthday.
39 again.
Right, 39 and holding.
yeah.
Holding and holding.
I do that at home.
I'm taking her to lunch.
I just got a cousin who turned 100, and so that's what I did. I called her and I said, "Oh, you're turning 39." She said, "Again, yeah."
Yeah.